Hi everyone. My first guest in the new year is one of my favorites, Salman Butt. Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Walaikum assalam. I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you for joining. So let's get right into it. I want to start by speaking about Test cricket. Do you think
Hmm.
2024 was the best year for Test cricket in a long time? We saw some incredible upsets, thrilling matches, nail-biting finishes, and games swinging, in every direction, and many results completed within 4 days.
Yes, thankfully, we've just rediscovered what was in front of us. And it's just like, uh, when a pigeon in front of the cats, you just close your eyes. So by closing your eyes, you don't see what you have. And that's something that we did. It was, great to hear Brendan McCullum at the end of the series when England lost to Pakistan, and he was laughing and he said on the microphone, "I don't know what took them so long to get to this, because this is something that's always been there. The weather suits for making spinning tracks. You don't water them much, just a little bit of water, give them lots of air. That we use the big fans over there, the sunlight, and just keep it dry, keep the surface, the top of the surface full of friction to get the turn, and keep the crack size small. And it was always going to respond to the spinners and for the reverse swing as well later on. So I think only two spinners were good enough for the whole English side we saw. And I think we missed the trick against England in last year. Against Australia, we could have been in the finals of this World Test Championship, but just due to bad tactics, just maybe, or you'd rather say laziness, or not knowing your strengths, or maybe not knowing how to, play around with the pitches, how to get different behaviors from the same soil, which you can by means of different preparation. You can get the same surface to react differently, and that's something that we missed out, and we don't know who to blame. But because it's gone now, we'll never blame. We might have them again in a position of making decisions, but uh, for now, I think it was something that ended well, and then going on to win the one day series in Australia and in South Africa added to that much required confidence in the players just before the Champions Trophy.
What about Test cricket as a whole, like in terms of India and Australia, the Lord Gavaskar Trophy, India losing against New Zealand, Bangladesh causing an upset for Pakistan as well?
Yeah, I think if you talk about Bangladesh versus Pakistan, once again, I think our tactics, you do not only decide what to do by just watching the opposition. You also need to have the resources to execute your own plan. So we only had a couple of fast bowlers who we think are very lethal, but because their sample size of their 4 day cricket or 5 day cricket is so small, that they haven't completely developed as test bowlers. They haven't gone through that phase of different ways of operating, because a test cannot be won without picking up 20 wickets. There is just no other way. So to pick up those 20 wickets, you have to be good enough. You have to last the time. To bowl, you need to be at least 25 overs in a day. That is where you need to be in terms of capacity. And that is where the boys were not. And as a result, we suffered. And then when we switched the other way around, and we discovered two boys who were, long gone for us, like they wouldn't have played cricket if these pitches were not made. And both of them did not even clear their fitness tests. So that also puts a great question mark on what sort of testing we have, because they bowled 40 overs each in one innings. They picked up the whole team of the England. They never faltered in their line and length. When they came to bat, they scored runs. When they were in the field, they were energetic. So I don't know what sort of fitness testing we have, because the ones who passed it looked very lazy in the game. And the ones who didn't pass it looked fully energetic throughout the game, and they performed and they won us the series.
That is interesting. Now, what are your thoughts on the two-tier system for Test cricket? And I want you to think about two things. So first, do you think this structure could discourage teams like the West Indies, who are in the midst of rebuilding, from focusing on Test cricket and then instead pushing them towards prioritizing, let's say, T20? And secondly, probably in the short term, the two-tier system might boost viewership and revenue. But do you think it could ultimately harm the sport's long-term growth if there's no clear path for like a team that's in the lower tier to advance to the top tier?
Well, I guess that like any other thing, any other system, every system has its pros and cons. But if you talk about the two-tier thing, marketing wise, it might benefit for time being. But then the market would be very restricted to those three or four nations. And talk about having a cricketing, community in the world, how squeezed it would become. So
Yeah.
rather than just thinking about the marketing at this precise moment, they should think about, you know, getting the game that sort of global status where everybody gets to a point where they're strong enough to play test cricket. And for that, initially they will have to invest, and their investment would not be in terms of, putting money from their pocket, but to squeeze this league cricket a bit, because this is taking away everything. And for them to realize that, I don't know how long they will take, because this is something which is, not, it is taking test cricket away from the bigger nations. How come the associate countries who are only playing or only looking at these glamorous leagues, how, ever they're going to come close to test cricket? And unless they come to closer to test cricket, their skill sets would never develop in terms of being able to compete the likes of India or Australia or New Zealand, that or England you spoke about. And even the English are suffering to an extent, because they're a very conditional condition oriented sort of a team. If they have good batting conditions, they can be very lethal. And if there's a challenge in terms of spins or seam movement, England are not the greatest team, because they only know one way, and that is the baseball thing, even in test cricket. And if any challenge comes their way in terms of a different condition where they have to readjust, they just pick up their hands and they say, "Yeah, well, this is our way. We take our wins and losses." So the beauty of test cricket is that it enables you to get accustomed to adaptability. Every session you change your shots. As a bowler, you change your length. There's a new ball, there's an old ball, there's a second new ball. So there's one good technique player at number 6 as well, waiting for the new ball. You want to score big, you want to play the first 2 overs in a certain way so that you don't have to fall into trouble on the last whole day. So there's a lot of tactics involved. You win the toss, but you take a decision based on what will happen on the fourth and the fifth day. So all that process has been taken away by this 20 and 10 over thing. And unless this thing comes to a certain number, I don't think Test cricket can be revived just on the basis of saying that a two-tier system is going to do a world of good.
Yeah. And in light of that, now Pakistan's playing very few test matches as compared to other teams. And this is before
Yeah,
the two-tier system. And I
yeah.
think Sean Masood also raised this point in one of the press conferences, saying this is a roadblock in developing a team, especially there are months of gaps between test matches. So is test cricket not a priority for Pakistan?
Seems as if, because there was a talk about leaving one of the test matches in South Africa and taking a couple of T20s in that place. It also happened in one of the West Indies tours a few years back, where a test match was replaced by a couple of T20 matches. So, do we really think test cricket is the priority? And on the contrary, just forget about this particular team that at the moment is engaged in test cricket. Talk about youngsters, talk about future, talk about years ahead. Who is going to play test cricket if they know that there is going to come 8 months in a year where there is no test cricket?
Yeah.
And there will be like 20 different leagues in those 8 months. And the whole point of being, a professional cricketer, being cricket being your livelihood and you being at the, forefront of every place, only league cricket will become the platform. So if that's the way forward, then I think we should stop worrying about Test cricket. And if we really care about Test cricket, then there has to be a specific number of leagues, and the bilateral Test cricket needs to continue. You look, this championship, one team plays 18 Test matches, and the other team gets a percentage out of its 10 Test matches, and not everybody gets to face everyone. So I think even this is not the way it is supposed to be.
And you're saying for players, so we don't see Pakistani's main pacers playing test matches. And I'm thinking about Roof in particular. Like, does he get to opt out himself of playing test cricket, or is it the board that decides? Like, couldn't the board help him grow into a test player?
Look, you see, they are taken young, teenage sensations, picked up by franchises, hammered in their minds that this is the future, this is the money, this is the glamour, this is the way forward. And only 4 overs to ball, and that too in 2 or 3 spells. And icing on the cake is a T10, 2 overs spell. So who is going to take a toll on his body, bowl 25 overs in a day, probably at the end of a 5 test series, carry a niggle or maybe an injury to heal, do all the rehab, get a limited amount of money with not a lot of audience and not many opportunities, as many as the white ball cricketers have. So the whole scenario is tailor made to squeeze test cricket. And you talk about reviving it by further squeezing it into a two-tier thing. So I don't know how which formula they've worked out, but this doesn't seem to be the ideal way to enhance test cricket.
Yeah, at the moment it seems more revenue driven than maybe expanding
Yeah.
the form.
It's just like, putting up lots of candies in a big shop and, having a very good packing and showing that this is the most tastiest thing and a very catchy and attractive thing, very nice on the, taste buds. But end of the day, it causes sugar spikes, mood changes, and all sorts of disorders in your body. So that's the kind of thing happening in cricket at the moment.
Now, I want to pick your brain. Oh, actually, I want to maybe talk about and pick your coaching brain a little bit. So, in the recently concluded Border Gavaskar Trophy, we saw Virat Kohli struggling playing outside the off stump. How do you coach someone like him, or is it too late?
No, it's not the technique. It's just the messaging from the brain. When
Just
there's
reaction.
something wrong, the message is not delivered in time. And when there are hiccups in the messaging, the technique suffers. And on the outset, what people see is the bat wasn't there, the body wasn't there, the hands were away. So, to put all that in order, you need to be very clear in the mind. So, the problem is not in the technique, it's the same man scoring 80 plus international hundreds. And how suddenly his technique can be not good enough to score another 100. I do not believe that. And the time is long gone of big changes. You can always make minor adjustments, but talk about major changes. 16, maybe 15 is the time when you develop those basics. And after that is how you play around with them. And then the changes that come on the way, you evolve as you grow old, as you get more experience with those little adjustments over different periods of time. You get to a place where you start to understand your game. The real development is not about knowing your oppositions. The real development is when you know about yourself, because only then you know how to operate where and against whom.
Now, would you drop Virat Kohli or Rohit Sharma or both for the upcoming England tour of India?
Uh, I think a break can be very good at times. So if you were to be very ruthless, you can name it as dropping. Yeah.
The
And
resting.
if you can, you know, are a good communicator and you have this tendency of communicating things in a way where people understand and you can convince them, then the better name is a break. It's the same thing. So if you want somebody to feel bad about it, then dropped is the right way to go. And if you want people to be part of the plan and not leave playing cricket, then break is good. So it's the way how you take, and sometimes it has to be called dropped as well, because certain different individuals react differently, and it all depends upon who you are talking to and at what point in time. So I think uh, they need a break.
Now, Saim Ayub, he was given many chances and he proved himself. But do you think he was introduced too early to the international cricket scene?
No, I don't think so, because the point is that the talent was so evident. It was so much there to see that it was only a matter of time when he started clicking. So when he came in, imagine a young man and everybody seeing him beyond his years. And then the kind of attention that you get these days through different social media platforms, you really start to think about yourself as being a superhuman. And in doing so, sometimes you just rush through things. So the best thing that happened to him was play test cricket and then ease into the white ball. And the moment he started taking time in test cricket, his game started to, get more organized. And then as he eased through from test cricket to white ball, he was a different player and the game
I
became
mean,
easier.
you had to see that after introducing him to the international cricket. And I think I'm coming from the idea of, for example, in Australia, we see time and again players debuting in their 30s. I mean, we had Bo Webster starting in the BPT and he's, I think, early 30s. So is that too late in Pakistan?
Yeah, sadly for some, the understanding is such. But I believe that the batters, especially, they are at their most productive from 30 to 38, or maybe even 40, depending how fit they are. Because then their observations and their reading of the game and the means of operation, they become so good at all that it's so easy for them to operate. Even with a limited technique, you just know how to operate and you just know how to adapt. And you will just go see the pitch, see the opposition, select your shots, and then start to operate accordingly. But unfortunately, here, we the moment somebody turns beyond, it goes beyond 30, we start off, thinking about replacing, getting in a youngster, and then we do not take the full, advantage of the available abilities that there are at that time, and we just like to jump onto somebody else. And like this, I think we have lost a lot of good players.
Saeed Anwar was recently inducted in the PCB Hall of Fame, and we've seen a number of batters being dubbed as the next Saeed Anwar, with you even being one of them. But do you think Saim Ayub has the potential to be the next Saeed Anwar?
Absolutely, no doubt about it. But it's just the distance, the pathway that remains to be, seen, that how it goes. You need to have that hunger, that determination to go the length. This is also a problem in our society. We just see a glimpse of somebody doing something and suddenly he becomes a Saeed Anwar or a Wasim Akram or a Wakar Yunus or a Shoaib Akhtar or an Imran Khan or an Abdul Qadir or a Miyadad. It doesn't happen in weeks, months. It happens in decades.
And I guess it also pressure on them because now they think I have to be as good as this person that they're being equated to.
Well, your one, two, three big innings or series will not make you these people. What you do in a decade or over a period of 2 decades will tell that if you are able to be in the same boots or not. So our, you know, concentration, attention, and also that sort of thing is just too small to judge someone. Anybody who can swing the ball back in, being a left-hander, becomes a Wasim Akram in Pakistan. And anybody who can drive gracefully through the covers can become a Saeed Anwar. It's not that easy.
Okay, yeah. Now, there's been a lot of talk regarding injury. We know Bumrah, we've heard of Nortje, and of course, Sun. So in Pakistan, do you think there's a craze towards getting instant results and lack of forward thinking is completely there when it comes to injury management and rehabilitation?
Education. Education is the
Lack of
key
it?
thing. It's absolutely education and the lack of it. And then people trying to impose their own thoughts and their own, way of thinking without having any practical experience of the sport. And then they try to follow the things in letter and spirit and apply the same things on a group of people where every individual is different. They have a different response to the same food, to the same training, to the same environment. Every single person has a different response to the same things. So you cannot have one plan for everybody. for fitness purposes, the role oriented training, the body types, the sleeping hours, the recovery time, all that has to be noted. And how can we have one fitness test for everybody? How can you have the same training plan for everybody? So we need to get rid of the uneducated elements and that old school of thought where you think that you can change everything. You, if you ever get a chance to go through the coaching manuals and the different levels that there exist, just give me three players in the world who have this whole course being displayed in their game. There's one course and every single player is different. Everyone have their, so there is no one way to success. And if you go by those manuals, Malinga would have never played test cricket.
No.
Sean Tate would have never come close to test cricket. Pathirana would never be playing cricket. Wasim Akram's front leg was never braced while bowling, and he was the greatest ever. So it's good to read them. It's good reading stuff, or maybe to be told to somebody who's at under the age of 14 or 12 or somebody. At a very early age, the basics can come in and can be developed. But when you go forward, there are certain things that you can do and certain things that you shouldn't do. But I don't know how long we will take to reach that level. At the moment, we're not there. So as a result, our players have suffered perhaps late diagnosis, wrong rehabs, wrong reasoning, uh, and who suffers? Only the players, nobody else.
I want to now ask you a little bit about Champions Trophy. Saim Ayub isn't fit. Who would you want to open with after Salman? Is it Shan Masood, Imam Al Haq? Interesting and introduce you to Kiro or
Well, there are a number of options. Obviously, you named two of them, which is Shan and Imam. And if you have a look at their one-day records, then Imam has a very good average, and he's been partnering Fakhar Zaman over a period of time, and both of them have had a lot of big opening partnerships. And he's also been part of the biggest chases against Australia. So he has the experience. If you talk about Shan, he's also done very well in the List A career, but his one-day experience is not that great because he hasn't played much. Yeah, he's a mature player, but he hasn't got many opportunities, mainly because those two have been batting well successfully. So there wasn't a place for the third opener since Abdullah Shafiq came, and Abdullah is not in great form. So I think the best option would be for Sam to get fit and come back. But if he doesn't, then we might see Imam ul Haq, do the opening part.
You're playing 11 for Pakistan in the Champions Trophy against India.
Against India?
In particular, yes.
Well, I'd say it's generic. Talk about Dubai stadium conditions. It can be pretty lively when the wicket has been rested. So yes, three fast bowlers, one all-rounder, one specialist spinner, and also Aga Salman can add into the spin contingent, and then have around six proper batters. The wicketkeeper will also be one of the batters, and then the all-rounder. So I think that can be the case, but it all depends which 15 we have, and then on the day, what the pitch looks like, and there might be one or maybe two changes, but I think that's about it. The core would remain the same throughout because the conditions would not be that different.
Now, the Afghanistan team seems to hire locals as their mentors for big tournaments. I think they had Dwayne Bravo for the T20 World Cup, Ajay Jadeja for ODI, and then now Yunus Khan. So what's this benefit? Is this something other teams should also adopt and, look to do?
It's not a new practice. When Bob Woolmer was coaching Pakistan and I was playing for Pakistan, when we went to Australia, we used to have Dean Jones with us and have different Australian players in different states. And when we went to England, he would, ask those Pakistanis who had played a lot of county cricket in England. And they would be there and they would come and, and we would have a manager like we had Zahir Abbas, and he had every ground that we went to, his name was on the honor board. So he knew every place where what was happening. So I think it's a very decent practice to get you the first-hand knowledge of things. And then the kind of person that you select should be, the person with a lot of success in that on that particular zone, because then he will tell you whatever it took to, turn around things. in those particular conditions. So I think it's a good idea. And the first-hand knowledge comes to you.
Now, Pakistan has long been known for producing world-class bowlers, but that impact seems to have faded in the recent past. And do you think this decline affects the development of Pakistani batters who no longer face the same sort of quality in domestic cricket? And I say this because in your time, you practiced against Shoaib Akhtar, Mohammad Asif, Abdul Razak, Muhammad Amir in the nets, right? So how vital was that for your growth as a batter?
Well, yes, as a person, if you look at these things and you say, yeah, you don't have that quality practice, so you can't be good enough. But tell me who Tendulkar practiced against, who Dravid practiced against. They never had great bowlers. They had maybe one or two, and that too in different eras. Maybe Kapil Dev was one, Srinath was very good, and maybe a couple of others. It's hard to name three or four in the same team, but they always had great batters. So this is something you can't exactly. I think it is more about how good your pathways are, what is being taught when you are growing up, and what sort of mentality you bring across. And that is where we've been hurt. Our children in schools are playing T10s, T20s. In clubs, they're playing T20 cricket. So they are not accustomed to reading the pitch, picking up the conditions, making decisions, selecting their shots on a particular pitch, adjusting their skill sets as sessions go by. In the morning, there was moisture. From after lunch till tea, there will be good for batting. In the evening, the reverse swing would come in. On the third day, there would be a bit of spin and the pitch would become a bit uneven. So all sorts of adaptability comes in. The advantage India has is their school cricket is 3-day cricket. And that is where they become aware of this great game. And that is where they learn how to adapt and what are, the ins and outs, the nitty-gritties of this sport. For us, we don't get a 3-day game till we get to the under 19s stage. Until then, we are playing these days mostly the shorter format. The schools, the clubs, the whole structure was built on, shorter formats. And that is why the techniques are suffering, the game awareness is suffering, the fitness is suffering. And the muscle memory, it's a game of muscle memory. So if your memory only knows bowling 4 overs, batting a few balls, slogging in the childhood, the technical part never comes in. And suddenly when you are exposed to the top oppositions, all that comes out and you're exposed. And then there is, not enough time or maybe not the right time to make big adjustment. And by that time, most of the people are too late. So if you have the correct pathways, all that would become very easy. And that is where we need to work hard. First, in decades ago, Pakistan college cricket was 3-day cricket. The university team used to play first-class cricket. Now where they are? Recently, there's one of the teams named HEC. So all these universities and colleges, they make one team and it has been inducted in the first-class system of the President's Cup. But the practice was long gone. Until date, the age group, there was PJL. Pakistan initiated PJL. Imagine 16, 17-year-old getting those opportunities to play T20 cricket and, getting the limelight, getting the contracts, getting on air, but playing T20 cricket. What would, convince them to play 4-day cricket, to do the hard yards? Their next stage would be PSL. And then from there on, they hit one good 30-run innings, a couple of sixes, and they are into the T20 side. Who wants to play the longer format? So we have been, shown this showcase all the time, but we have never been put through the factory where things are made. So only the boys are being exposed to the, that platform where everything looks very glittery. So I think we need to go to that, backroom sort of a thing, behind the scenes. And we have to go through that grind and that process. And then what will come out will be a different product. We have to take that seriously. There's a season going on and then there is an NOC thing going on.
Yeah.
So the players are taken into different places and the process is left in between. Why India prospers? Because they only play IPL, no other league. And for England and Australia, Test cricket is a tradition which they never leave behind. So that is why they are where they are, and why teams like Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and West Indies have suffered, because the youngsters have been overwhelmed by these leagues and other things. And also, the country the environment that we live in, they're not welfare states. There's one person earning the whole house, looking at him for bringing them everything. So his priorities become those, places where he can bring, money back home, where he can buy education for his children, buy medicine for his parents, and do different sort of duties. So the whole culture is pushing him towards something which doesn't make him a player of a full skill set. So a lot has to be done, but it has to start from the pathway.
Muhammad Rizwan, being the white ball captain, can he play more of a mentor role and be more fluid rather than rigid in the position he bats in, both in the T20 or the ODI formats?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Especially in T20 cricket, I think he should only bat where he has to, if required.
Yeah, like kind of pull back, see the situation, and only go in when it's really good.
Yeah, when it's required. Same was the case with Sarfaraz in the last years that he played for Pakistan. So I think the more he does that, the more good he will do to himself and the team. One day is fine, because 50 overs, you need partnerships in the middle. You can't go at one pace the whole 50 overs. You have to build that platform. So for one day, the position is fine. But for T20 cricket, he'll have to float for his own cause and for the team's cause.
I've heard you do cricket commentary, and it sounds like you enjoy it. What are the challenges you face in it? And, would you consider going into that as a career?
I think it's wonderful. I think the right information needs to go out via the experts. If a child or an aspiring cricketer is listening to any expert, I think he should know how the dismissal came about rather than what just happened on the ball. So announcement is one thing, but the description, you should be able to deliver the tactical game that is being played. And that is where listening to the Barry Richards, the Richie Benos, the Sunil Gavaskar, or Ravi Shastri, or Ian Bishop, or Michael Holding, or Ian Chappells, that is where they were different. What we have these days is a lot of announcers, presenters, which are good in a way, because you have to add that color to the whole thing. But I think people like Atherton and Nasser Hussain, why they are great to listen to, because they give you that insight which somebody who hasn't played the game, he just cannot, or she just cannot. So it is absolutely vital for the people to, give that right explanation. And that is, I think, where we have lacked. And I think that is definitely a place to explore. And some of the former players have done wonderfully well, but I think more people are required at all levels.
Now, before we conclude, I wanted to do a short rapid fire round with you. So let me know if you're ready. Are you?
Well, I'll try my best.
All right. So if you weren't a cricketer, what would you have been?
I never imagined.
No. Yeah.
I never imagined. That's the truth.
Okay. Would you imagine just now, just right in this moment?
Well, I might have been pushed into doing something I never loved to do. And that could be anything, maybe study, maybe become a doctor or something. But I would have been pretty awful at that.
Okay, one sport you're terrible at.
Snooker.
Your finalists in the Champions Trophy.
Pakistan and Australia.
Okay. Your favorite commentator?
Of all time?
Yeah.
Richie Benos.
What was your strategy for facing the first ball of an innings?
Expecting the full ball, the in-swinging full delivery.
I asked an ex-Canadian player this, and he said not getting out. That was his strategy.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why I say that, and every batsman should think about the full and in-swinging delivery, because that gives you the correct position and the balance, and that gives you, reduces your more chances, of the ways of getting out. they can be, taken out of the way. So not just thinking about getting out is like, I think it's not a positive thing to think about. That is obvious. You want to score runs and you can't score runs after getting
True.
out.
The BGT or the Ashes? If you had to choose one, what would you watch?
Sorry?
The BGT, so Border Gavaskar Trophy or the Ashes, which one would you choose to watch?
Ashes.
If your life was a movie, what would be the title?
The unexpected.
Interesting. Who do you see as the World Test Championship winners in June? South Africa or Australia?
I think Australia.
If you could time travel, would you go to the past or the future?
Future.
Who has the best technique out of the five? Babar Azam, Virat Kohli, Joe Root, Kane Williamson, or Steve Smith?
I think Kane Williamson number 1, Babar number 2, Root number 3, Virat Kohli 4, and Smith number 5.
Most dreaded fielding position.
Most
Dreaded fielding position, something you didn't want to be in.
silly Madon.
Any hidden talent you have that your fans don't know about?
Being funny?
All right. And which bowler made you wish for a rain delay?
Well, nobody of that sort. Nobody of that. Never.
Yeah. And finally, your memorable knock of your career.
India, 2004, November 4. I think November 4, yeah.
8 or 28?
Yeah, 108.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.